Abby, can you hear me? Abby, are you on?
Looks like she dropped off.
Abby, can you hear us?
Good morning, I can hear you.
Okay, thank you. We'll go ahead and call the meeting to order. Lenny, can you do roll call, please?
Mike Dolson, Tom McDonald,
Here.
Kara Langford, Martin Charlo,
Present.
James Matt, James Steele Jr.,
Yes.
Jimmy Molitor, Jennifer Finley,
Here.
Leonard Tuteeth, Danielle Matt, here, Lenise Trahan.
Thank you, Lenny. Mike is just in the other room. He'll join us when he can. And James and Jimmy are on a official travel at a gaming conference. So with that, I would ask Lenny if you would lead us in a prayer this morning. Thank you, Len. Len Schlen, thank you. We have minutes, I think. I think Abby sent them out also. Look.
Mr. Chair.
Yeah, go ahead, James.
Yeah, we're on the minutes, right?
Yes, we are.
Yeah, I made my corrections and emailed them to Abby. And basically I made a correction to my comment on Cindy Marengo, just to make it a more general statement that I discussed her roof situation and not all of the monetary stuff. We're trying to sort that out yet.
Thank you, James. So it's the September 12th minutes. Testing.
Mr. Chair,
Go ahead, James.
would it be okay to make a motion to approve the minutes with corrections?
I believe you are. I'm not seeing anybody else. I wasn't here, so I can't add anything to the minutes. Motion by James to approve the September 12th council minutes with any corrections. Second by Carol. Sorry. Any further discussion? See none, all is in favor, show of hands. Martin? Oh, good to go. Okay, we have 6-4, and I'm abstaining because I didn't participate in that meeting. Motion passed. We have today's agenda. Any changes to the agenda? Martin, one item? Update, okay. Anybody else? Okay. Carol? Okay, if there's time, I'll officially do my trip update to the IJC meeting. Okay, I would entertain a motion to approve today's agenda with the additions and corrections. Motion by Len. Second by Danielle. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all is in favor? Unanimous. Okay, let's go ahead and start with our first item, which would be Martin.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Last week I attended the Western Montana Conservation Commission, combination of the UC3 and the Flathead Basin Commission. It's a state-funded commission. We have a representative, voting representative, and then a non-voting rep, which is myself. So Rich Jensen is the person that is officially the rep. We are dealing with all things water, I guess. So septic systems, there's a effort right now to get septic systems cleaned, then disposal of that septic leachate and all that fun stuff is actually really concerning because a lot of the septic systems in Lake County have not been registered or cataloged or anything. And so Lake County, there's a push to do all septic systems. So if you have a septic system at your house and you think it might be older, get it checked, could be leaking. They just fail after about 25 years. So I'll send Abby kind of a summary of that. That was it. They did ask for I tried to give an update on the IJC, what you were doing there, but I didn't have a ton of info because I just don't think you guys have gotten real far yet. So I did kind of let them know you were there and you were the representative and contact you. And I'm sure all of them know who you are. So we can get a hold of you. So, all right, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Martin. I know that on the septic tanks and leaky septic systems going into surface discharge, that's a critical need to fix because of the, especially with the warming climate temperatures, where the production of blue-green algae. So if we have excessive nitrates or phosphorus going into the streams from people's failed systems, that's a contributing factor. So it's really important to do that. Blue-green algae is a toxic event and kills livestock, pets, humans, etc. So next up we have Jen. Go ahead, Jennifer.
So on, oh my goodness, August 28th, August 28th, I attended the State Tribal Economic Development Commission meeting in Wolf Point. And one of the things that I just wanted to share for the record is that Export Montana through the Department of Commerce helps Montana companies do business outside of the United States. So if there are any tribal businesses that want to learn how to do international business, set up their website for international payments, they can provide that assistance for free. And then through Export Montana and TRIA, which is, I believe, through the University of Montana, they're doing a pilot project to take Native artists on a trade mission to France within the next year. So I think that's a really exciting opportunity. And the Montana Tourism Office is also going to redo their materials about each tribe in Montana. And so they're going to be working with photographers and videographers on every reservation. So they'll be looking for photographers and videographers to work for, or to work with on every reservation, and those will be paid jobs to create those materials about each tribe in Montana. So I just wanted to share that.
Thank you. Okay, go ahead, Carol.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman and Council. Guys, I attended the state drug court session last week, where it showed all the drug use throughout the state of Montana, and I tell you, it just took the wind out of my sails when I seen that. And the reason why is because the mapping was about, it had an individualized drug that's used in every area, plus alcohol, and then it showed the deaths in each community throughout the state of Montana. And the corridor of Highway 93 was loaded with, to me, it appeared just that this corridor has massive drug use. I mean, we know that. And the rest of the state of Montana, including Yellowstone County and Great Falls, they didn't have half the use that the map showed. And I just really felt sad. I thought, here I thought we were making headways with, with this recovery and all that. And I don't know, it must have been too boring for Jennifer. Anyway, it was just really sad to see that. But then I kind of started talking to some of our drug court people, and they said the reason why it does look so bad is because of the rest of the areas don't report like we do. And so, it kind of helped me out a little bit to get through the rest of the meetings, because I thought, man, wow, this is just a waste. Me attending county and tribal and, trying to get all this stuff going. But it's not just me trying to get it all going, it's all of us. But, just being kind of integrated into it and feeling like, oh, we can do so much. But I found out, and I want to get a copy of this system and show it to council, so you can all see what I'm talking about. But all of the dots on the map were just massive, and I'm just thought, and then it even showed the deaths on there. So I think it's important that council see that. So I'll try to get the individual that does this system and have him come in, or maybe get it to Craig and he can come and show us. And then the other thing was, I met this guy, Durant Bear Medicine. He's the one that taught the historical trauma and cultural importance to the state drug court and the tribal drug court people. And I was thinking about trying to get him here, but then I Googled him. And he told us about this in the training that he was in, that he had some prison, he had been in prison, and he had stole money from the tribe, the Blackfeet tribe. And so when I Googled that, and I told you guys we should invite him, I thought, oh man, I don't know if that's a good idea, because everybody's gonna say, well, look what he's done. But he's really turned his life around. He has graduated from Duke and has done tremendous things, but he definitely was impactful with his presentation on the culture, the history. And I think it's important that we do hear from him because I just think the way he told it and all the non-members that were in the room, you know, I think they really got it. They really understand because he talked about the land, you know, the land grab and, you know, just all the stuff that tribes and Indian people went through, and he explained it really well. So I just thought it would be important that all of our staff hear that. You know, most of us know this, but there's some people that don't. So I was just hoping that we could bring him in, and I'll let Katie Jones know the name. And if she chooses to bring him, that's fine, but if not. But overall, I think the drug court people were really glad that, you know, there was a few of us there from here. It was a really good presentation. That's all I have. I appreciate the opportunity to go.
Thank you, Carol. Go ahead, Martin.
I think the other reason why the drug count is so high here is because of our tribal police department and how good of a job they do getting all the drugs off the street. You know, I think that there's probably similar usage in those other places. It's just that their cops aren't as good as ours. They aren't in tune with the community. So I don't really see that as a horrible thing. You know, like I think it's an indication of how good we do as a law enforcement. So.
Thank you, Martin. I was kind of thinking the same thing. I know that Craig has reported that himself, that, you know, we have a doubling down of, you know, law enforcement. So really everywhere else probably would even have more than us if they were putting the same effort in law enforcement. So thank you. Quickly, I want to just give an update on the Canadian United States boundary waters treaties, joint commissions appointed governance board to help deal with the Elk Valley watershed pollution from the massive open pit coal mines up there that are polluting the Kootenai River, Lake Kootenai, and all of Kootenai River in Montana and Idaho. We had our first meeting last week, and it's a new paradigm. That's the first time they've given tribes a voice or a seat at the table to come and have a positive outcome on such a critical water pollution issue that affects your neighbor. We have, of course, fish that are being affected, reproduction being affected, and threatened endangered species that we're trying to recover and spending considerable resources on through hydropower mitigation that are in jeopardy of this immense water pollution. So it was a very first meeting. It was organizational in effort. And there's also another committee had a joint call yesterday afternoon about it. A study commission that is a 2-year appointment, and they will actually be the non-biased research committee to make sure that all the data that we have from the mining company, from British Columbia, from Canada, the U.S. agencies, our tribes in the states, Idaho and Montana, that the information we have is accurate. The modeling is true, and they'll identify other further needs that we need to adjudicate and come to an outcome that's positive for our waters in Montana. So the advisory or the governance board that I sit on, I'll be the representative, and Len Two-Teeth will be my alternate. And then we have a couple of science folks that are also assigned to it to help give us information. They meet in person once a year. There is a sunset to this board. It's about 2.5 years, but we'll meet as needed by Zoom. So reducing costs and stuff. So we're progressing. So I have some positive outcomes. Everybody is pretty positive. We're going to see information from the mining company for the first time on what they do for modeling and their own information to be able to validate their facts. So, and what they claim. So it's a day forward. Really appreciate everybody's been involved in our staff, our legal department, our support staff, and more importantly, tribal council, recognizing this is an impact. It impairs our subsistence use of fisheries, fish and wildlife resources, and waters of our Aboriginal territory. And more importantly, it's a partnership with our Kootenai Tribe of Idaho to make sure we're standing up for what's right. And so really appreciate council for doing that. With that, we'll move into the regular session. So we have any new adjustments Or is it just Len? You up first, Len? Well, come on up. You're in the room. Okay. I know there's some other guests out there. Well, do they want to be introduced? No, is she? Well, real quick, we'll do her and then just have them come in when. Yep. Go ahead, Len.
Yes, good morning, Mr. Chair and rest of the council. Several months ago, I brought to you a small parcel owned by Mr. Boone Cole that lies surrounded by our mitigation parcels on the north side of the highway and the railroad. I have successfully negotiated a buy-sell agreement with him, and we are scheduled to close next week. I have that scheduled with the chairman at this point. So today I'm asking for you to pass a resolution to purchase that small parcel because it's critical to our restoration efforts in that area.
Motion by Len to approve the resolution to authorize the purchase of that fee land and located in Sanders County, Montana. Second by Danielle. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all's in favor? Unanimous.
Okay,
Thank you, Len. Keep up the good work.
that's all I have today. Thank you. Thanks.
That was kind of a threshold kind of moment.
Okay.
Thanks,
Thanks.
Lynn.
Thank you, Len. All right, we have some guests in the room. Come on up. Welcome.
Talk.
Thank you, Jeannie. Good
Yeah.
morning.
You know, I usually have to say things more than once because that's how my mind works. So, okay. Thank you for allowing us to be a part of your day. I understand that you have a very busy schedule and I just would like you to know what's going on in early childhood services. We have company and some of them are new friends, and some of them have actually worked with us for 20 years. So this is an exciting trip. And because you all know how nervous I get. And when I get really nervous, I forget who I am and who you are. And so if we could start with Lula, would you? If you could introduce yourself and talk about your visit.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. Thank you. I want to first say thank you for giving me this opportunity to meet with all of the new tribal representatives, all new faces. This is a privilege and an honor, and it's been my honor to work with Salish and Kootenai for the past 20 years. My name is Lula Howard Sutton. Last time some of you saw me, it was Lula Howard. So now it's Sutton. But I'm still the same person. I'm still enjoying my work with Salish and Kootenai. And I want you to know they're one of the top programs in AIAN. That's for American Indian and Alaskan Native programs. While I'm here this week, I will be assisting the new incoming director at the Salish and Kootenai Head Start program and Early Head Start program as she takes over the role and follow in some good footsteps. And we want to make sure that transition is easy, goes easy, and that you all still continue. And I have no doubt, after speaking with the new incoming director, that you continue to provide outstanding services to your community in the way you push forward each and every day, the staff members, and they're always ready to adapt to changes and they don't give up easily. They keep pushing for the love of the children and families. With me, I have members from the TTA team as training and technical assistants, and you will see them from time to time visit, providing assistance wherever is needed. So I'm going to let them introduce themselves.
Hi, good morning. My name is Gail Perryman, and I am with Training and Technical Assistance, and I am the grantee specialist for CSKT. And I am very honored to be here, and I just want to thank you. I'm so happy to see this program, and actually your area is quite gorgeous. I've never been here. And to see everything that's being done for tribal children is quite amazing. So thank you for this time.
Good morning. My name is Jamie James. I'm the early childhood specialist with the Region 11 AIAN. And I just first want to say thank you for the invite and allowing me to come to your community. It is very beautiful. It is my first time here. And some of the areas that I provide support in is within the early childhood scope. And so for this week, I will be working with the ed managers and with the disabilities coordinator in reviewing the amazing coaching plan that has been created. And so we're going to be talking about it and just reflecting on it and really working with them to support them in any way so that there is a continued delivery of high quality interactions for the children in your community. Thank you.
We lose it? Oh, there it is. It's back. We're having some mic issues this morning, so sorry. Great to meet you all and have you back again. So we're very proud of our program, you know, very proud. Been really important for our people for such a long time. And it really is the future. You know, we really need to enhance and make it even better if that's possible. So appreciate you all and the work that you do. Any other comments from council? Yeah, Len.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I want to thank you all, thank you ladies for taking the time to come and visit with us again. I also would like to just acknowledge Jeannie. Jeannie, I want to thank you for all the time, effort, and energy that you put in to make our program so successful. And I've always admired your leadership, and especially for this program. This is one of our most important programs within the organization. And so I just want to thank you all for the work that you do. So thank you.
Thank you, Len. Go ahead, Carol.
Yeah, I also want to thank you ladies for coming in. I've probably met a few of you a couple of times. But like Len said, Jeannie, I don't even know how to start to say thank you for all that you've done for all the kids and my kids. I mean, they're grown men now, 40 and 45 years old, and that's, you know, you've ran such an awesome program.
Now they're older than me, Carol.
And yeah, right, and then you know, everything that you've just brought together is just amazing. I mean, the love, the care, you don't get that in a lot of places. And so it's like family. Well, it is family. We all know we're all family, but what you've done is just unbelievable. And it's had an impact on every single child. I just know how impacted my kids were. So I can't imagine no kid being left behind in your system. And it is absolutely amazing. And I don't even know how to thank you, Jeannie, but just to say that you've done an awesome job, and I appreciate that. And I think it's important these ladies hear, and I'm sure they already know, because you just see those kids so happy and now they're growing. And so anyway, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Jennifer, go ahead.
Yeah, Len's right. This is one of the most important programs that we have because it's caring for our children. And children can't advocate for themselves. they can't take care of themselves. They're depending on adults to do it. And adults who do the kind of work of caring for children and protecting them and nurturing them and teaching them are doing really special work. And they're making sure that we have a next generation of people. So it's very important. And when I think about Jeannie, I think of somebody who always has a permanent smile on her face. I don't think I've ever seen her without a smile. And she really is as kind as she seems. She's the real deal. So, so thank you for coming and thank you, Jeannie.
I would just like to say that the things that you've said make me warm and fuzzy. Well, maybe not fuzzy, but one of the things that you need to know is that, okay, I have interfaced with you for years with this group. And so I get those warm fuzzy things, but the people who do the work daily, the people that juggle their own families and their Head Start families, just like today, I have folks that can go and pick these ladies up and show them this wonderful building, and it's not a one-man job. It's really not. And while Carrie has not been put into the place of director, she certainly, her and I have worked closely together, and she certainly, with her other experiences, she's done a great job. So we better start our day and let you start yours. So thank you for today, and thank you for your kind words.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you again.
Thank you.
Have a great day. Patty?
Council, I wonder if, since I'm in here, if I can give you a brief update about the Polson property?
Well, absolutely.
Okay.
Could I just butt in?
I don't know about that guy you got right there. I don't know. I kind of know that guy. I don't know. Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
See, 2 times. Okay, this is our current policy council chair, and each Head Start classroom votes in a parent to represent their interests with the administration, and Trevor's done a great job. He's done a great job. He's been real supportive. He's very active in his children's classroom. And I love having someone I can ask to help me with my computer. So, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Jeannie. Thank you, Trevor, for stepping up too. Good leadership. Thank you. Go ahead, Patty. I can always remember Trevor's name. He used to rent from me too. He was a former policeman in Ronan. And yeah, so unlike that, the St. Ignatius guy. I don't know what happened there. Go ahead, Patty.
Could we go into executive?
Sure. We'll move into executive. I'm on a break. Yep, we're good. We're back in open. Take a 5-minute break. Go ahead, Whisper, you're up.
Hasquext Pesia. I will try to keep my things succinct so that we can keep going to the next cool conversation that we have. My first item on the agenda is up on your screen. That is the CSKT Fish, Wildlife and Parks Joint Board Video Project. So we have our co-management license, and we have the Fish and Wildlife Board But one of the things that we've been challenged with is providing some sort of background to the new board members. So some sort of historical context about where the agreement came from, why we're all there, what we're expecting of them, those types of things. And so Dylan Tabish is on as well. He works for Fish, Wildlife and Parks and is their outreach manager for Region 1 and has agreed graciously to help work on this project. And they have funding for an in-house videographer to do interviews and to put the film together. And so our just intent is to make this available to the Fish and Wildlife Board, but also to our staff. The technical staff change often. That's biologists of all types, recreation managers, and potentially putting it out for the public. It's not a secret. It's just memorializing that history of that board and the agreement so that it's available for internal technical uses, but also PR. I guess one thing would be that we may like to get some drone footage of the area, and that requires council approval for flying drones over the reservation or anywhere, likely down in the Nine Pipe area on tribal land. I do not believe Fish and Wildlife Service allows that. And then I'm going to scroll down to some of the interviewees. Tom, if we could interview you, you have a long history. John Carter has agreed to be interviewed and provide his insight. John Harrison, me, Jim Williams, Lee Anderson. And if Tom, you had any other suggestions of people that might have good historical context to the board, we would like to do this video project.
All right, we have a proposal for a informational video project for the Cooperative State Fish and Wildlife Advisory Board. Yeah, could be used for multiple reasons, I guess. Civic lessons, future cooperations, MOUs. Yeah, I personally, I don't have any problem. I think it's actually a good thing to do. And I would assume that the drone footage would be centered around bird hunting and fishing. And then also, if there was a person that I would interview Mark Roscoe. I think he's available, but he was the Attorney General, also governor. So he's not only in the footprint of it, but he's also signed the agreement as a governor on the renewals. He was a strong supporter for the cooperative agreement. Any concerns with council? Consensus? We work with consensus? Does that work? Everybody okay? Thumbs up? All right, looks like we got it. James, you okay with it?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you, sir. All right.
Great, thanks. Next, we'll move on to the 2025-26, and I put it on the screen. Hopefully everybody can see it. Non-member regulations for next year. These have been through the entire decision-making process. We brought these to the culture committees initially. We brought those to you to approve for the 30-day public comment period. We had, and then we brought these to the Fish and Wildlife Board for approval. That's part of their function, is to make recommendations or advance the regulations that are proposed by the technical committee onto public comment. We had our 30-day public comment period and a public hearing. We had no comments from anybody. This includes the change. We've already voted on them individually. Do we need to vote individually again? This is the final version. And there's no change from the initial.
We've already discussed them all. Yeah, I think we
I
just,
could talk about them really quick. Maybe if anybody has a quick red flag. I will say the one change from when you approved it to go to the board and the public is that initially the technical advisory staff recommended that whitefish, both lake and mountain whitefish, be combined into one, and that we only allow a 20 fish limit for whitefish. The Fish and Wildlife Board opposed that proposal and requested a 50 fish limit for Flathead Lake of the combined species, with 20 fish being the regulation for the rest of the reservation. So here where it says C exemption, that's where we go down to 50 for Flathead Lake. That was the difference that'll be noted on your summary sheet behind this.
Thank you, Whisper. I think the other thing that they were doing was combining the two species of whitefish, mountain whitefish and Lake Superior whitefish that are only in Flathead Lake on the reservation. Well, they can drift down, but there is concern for mountain whitefish with temperature changes and low water flows in our streams and rivers. And so I think it's very appropriate to have a change in whatever that the technical team requires. There is no jeopardy in the populations of Lake Superior whitefish and Flathead Lake. They're the largest biomass of fish in the lake. And I think they were just trying to combine them together, and now they're re-separating them a little bit for the Flathead Lake opportunity. And so at first they thought 20 fish of Lake Superior whitefish is plenty a day for an individual. And trust me, that is plenty a day for an individual. They're big fish, and you catch 20 of those. You have more people in your boat, you can catch quite a few. But there was, you know, some people when they get in do catch a lot, and they do freeze them. And so when you get into a whitefish bite in Flathead Lake, it's a phenomenal thing. And a lot of times people like to catch as many as they can when the bite's on.
Sure.
So I could see where that would be an issue for some folks, even though there was absolutely no comment on it. The board is recommending a change, which is a little bit different than what the technical team had advised.
That's right.
So that's where we're at. Any issues with the proposal coming from the advisory board? Good to go?
I'm good with it.
Okay. Well,
Additionally, we had we had a recommendation for a condensing of language talking about reservoir minimum pool requirements. We did take out some language from the last version, and it now just says, should a reservoir be drawn down in surface elevation below the prescribed minimum pool requirements, the fishery will be temporarily closed and announced by press release. Previously, we had mentioned if the irrigation project makes a mistake and makes it too low. Now it just says, if it's too low, then we will post it and close it temporarily. Another one that we had was discharging any firearm in any designated campground, trailhead, boat launch, or parking lot. And then the ferry basin, I'm trying to move this little box. Ferry Basin would be closed to non-members from January 1st through May 15th. Reconciling about the motor vehicles or off-highway vehicles at below the high water mark, trying to keep people's vehicles out of the low water mark of the reservoirs and river, with the exception of St. Mary's, Lake, Lone Pine, Mission Dam, and Lower Crow. And then operating snowmobile it's prohibited to operate a snowmobile with the possession of firearms, bows, or crossbows, with the exemption of the wild bison hunt in Yellowstone. These are non-member regulations. And then we added this information about the disposition of human remains. We did this to the member regulations last year, and we're putting them in the non-member regulations. So a lot of times non-members are calling to put remains on tribal land. And that is it. Here's our summary sheet, and I hope that you have this. If you don't, I have a couple copies, but this is just the document we started using last year where we do a summary of the hearing and the public comment and everything. And if there's comments, we would list those, but there was none. So there are very limited amounts of information there.
yeah, go ahead, Len.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. For some time now, well, for years, I've been bringing up the issue of Neneme Road. As we all know, Sanders County does absolutely no maintenance of this road. So we would like to ask them to abandon that road and revert that back to tribal ownership. I think once we're able to gain ownership of this roadway, we're going to have better management access to Berry Basin. And because at some point in time, I would like us to just to see us to close the entire Berry Basin area to non-members. You know, just like we do the Jocko and the Lozo primitive area. But I'd like to get a report back from our roads department because I know we've asked them to reach out to Sanders County at one time to start this process. And since we're mentioning roads, I also would like to also bring up the county road that traverses across the Big Arm Resort. Now, there's been a lot of discussions between Lake County and the tribes, and both parties agree that the county, this is another road the county does not maintain, and so we requested to revert that back to the tribes. They've agreed, but the process has just never been followed through, and it's just a matter of signing a road abandonment document and get that recorded with our title plant and with the county, and that road is back in tribal ownership. So just wanted to mention that because it seems like there's been no movement on either of those issues for the past couple of years. Thank you.
Thanks, Len, for reminding us. We'll bring that up with Tony and Mark. Thank you. Any other questions with the regulations? If not, I would entertain a motion to approve the ordinance 44D bird hunting, fishing, and recreation regulations for non-members for the March 1st, 2025 through February 28th, 2026.
Motion, Mr. Chair.
As recommended by the advisory board. Motion by James, second by Danielle. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous. Thank you, Whisper.
Thank you. I have one last question for the council. We had a tribal member come into our office, a hunter, ask to provide deer meat for the Ronan Food Bank. Per 44D, that is not allowed as tribal members providing big game to non-tribal members. I'm here to ask if there would be a consideration of providing doe deer to the Ronan Food Bank through this tribal hunter, Dino Thomas, if people are interested in allowing that to be. I did get a hold of Food Sovereignty, and they indicated that they're doing good on protein right now. They have hunters that hunt elk and the depredation issues, so they're addressing those and able to get meat whenever they need. Not a usual request that we bring in, but I did want to bring it in case that was something council wanted to approve.
Any questions or comments on that? Put it under consideration or take action or? Yeah. Well, yeah, particularly the breadbasket. Yeah, get a pretty good population. I know Carol serves as a board member and volunteer there. She can attest to probably the diversity of the clientele. Yeah. I don't, you know, as long as there's no commerce taking place, there's no, not receiving any compensation for that. And if it was, I think that helps us with our, like your recommendation for female deer only, does help with some of our population management issues in certain areas. So that would be a good recommendation that I would also concur with. Yeah, go ahead, Carol.
Yeah, we do make the consideration for the fish. They do give that to the food banks.
Yeah, they do. That's been a long-standing one that's been approved by council to the lake trout fillets that aren't being used by the native fish keepers. That has been long. We've approved that years and years ago. It's been ongoing continuity of a lot of fish fillets going to area food banks, not just the breadbasket, but all of them from Kalispell down into Missoula, depending on the year and how much surplus they have. No different, absolutely. It's just the individual engaged in it, but is there a reason why we would put a limit on the number of deer he donates or no limit?
I would say limit it to fall of 2024. Maybe that just takes us to December. And if there was another request, we could reconsider then, just so it's not open-ended forever. I think limit doesn't have to be.
Okay. We'd have to take a motion on this because this is actually, we would have to take an action because it's a regulation exception. So if somebody wants to make a motion to approve Dino Thomas for hunting female deer, whitetail or mule deer, and donating those to the Ronan bed basket. That's the only place right now. Starting today through the end of December. Motion by Carol. Second by Len. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all is in favor?
Yes.
Martin's thinking. Okay, unanimous.
Thank you.
Thank you, Whisper. Okay, next up. Highway 93 Summers Corridor Study. And I see our entourage there. Welcome again. Good to see you.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members, Commission. My name is Bob Vosen with the Department of Transportation. Thanks for having us today. With me, I'll let everyone introduce themselves, but we're here to share with you information for the corridor study between Polson and Summers. So I'll turn it to my right and let Sarah introduce herself.
Good morning, Vice Chairman and Council members. My name is Sarah Nicolai. I work for Robert Petch and Associates on behalf of the Montana Department of Transportation.
Good morning. I'm Jackson Lang with MDT. I'm the corridor study planner, project manager working alongside RPA.
Good morning, Mr. Vice Chairman and chairpersons. I'm Joel Boucher with the Department of Transportation. I am the pre-construction engineer for the Missoula District.
Well, welcome everybody. Good to see you. Kisukukyu and good morning.
Good morning.
Esquext.
Thank you so much for giving us time to talk with you today. We wanted to share a brief presentation on our corridor study that we're doing on US 93 from Polson to Summers. And hopefully you all can see on your screen this presentation that we have. We have a few slides that we'd like to share, and then we're happy to answer any questions that you have. So in terms of our presentation, we wanted to give a little bit of background and overview of our planning study. I'll touch on the study area, and then we'll talk about a few of the areas of concern and our key findings so far in our study. And then lastly, we'll touch on our study schedule and next steps. So as has been mentioned here, MDT is conducting a planning study, and we've had the opportunity to talk with you before on different planning studies, but just wanted to reiterate that this is early in MDT's process. So looking at potential solutions, understanding needs and concerns in a particular study area, and this is before a project is nominated, so before any kind of design or construction process is occurring. That could happen in the future if MDT decides to pursue a project, but right now we're in this early planning phase. And in terms of the process that we follow, MDT has kind of a standard process for these planning studies. One of the first things that we look at is understanding existing and projected conditions so that we can identify areas of concern. And this is focused not only on transportation conditions, but we also look at the human and natural environment to understand what kind of constraints there might be in the corridor or areas that are very sensitive and important that we need to avoid and try to minimize any impacts from any future projects. From there, based on the data we collect with the existing and projected conditions, along with all of the feedback and input that we receive from the tribes, resource agencies, and public, we identify a set of needs and objectives. And so this tells us what we're trying to achieve in the corridor. And again, this is focused on transportation needs, but we do incorporate other considerations as well, environmental considerations being a key component. From there, based on our baseline information and the needs and objectives that we had defined, then we identify a set of improvement options. So we're focused on what kind of solutions make sense in this corridor to address those needs and objectives. We identify planning level costs, try to identify some funding sources for MDT to be able to pursue and implement these in the future. And then lastly, we also identify partners that could help MDT implement these projects. Our last step in the process, we develop a corridor study report. So this is a document that pulls all of our steps together, and we document our recommendations from the study. And at the bottom, you'll notice that tribal agency and public involvement that is occurring throughout the entire process. So I'll get into our study specifically. We are looking at the US 93 corridor from at the south end reference point 63, and this is just north of Folsom, and it's traveling up along the west side of Flathead Lake all the way up to reference point 104.2, so near Summers. So that red line is showing our study corridor where we're focused. So pretty long study corridor for this study. So I mentioned that we'll touch on some of the areas of concern that we've identified so far. We're about partway through our study, and we've had a chance to take a look at conditions in the corridor. What we're hearing and observing is that increasing traffic volumes are a concern, just as there's additional growth in the area, population, additional development, that's having an impact on roadway conditions. Another really important aspect of this is that there have been fatal and severe injury crashes within our corridor. One of MDT's top priorities throughout its entire department and program is focusing on safety and trying to minimize or ideally eliminate all fatal and severe injury crashes. So that is one of the focus areas of this corridor study. There are quite a number of wildlife conflicts, and I have a map here in a bit showing where some of those are occurring. So just wild animals that come onto the roadway, conflicting with vehicle movements. Mention environmental constraints. We do have a number of sensitive environmental resources in the corridor that we're paying attention to. And then lastly, cultural sensitivity. So we know that this is a very sensitive area to the tribes and from an historic cultural standpoint. So these are some of the kind of categories. I'm going to go into a little bit more detail on each of these on these next slides. So in terms of traffic conditions, I mentioned that traffic volumes are increasing. We've got a chart here showing over the last 20 years from 2004 to 2023, and we've picked out just 3 representative locations where MDT collects traffic volumes. So we've got a spot, that green line is just north of Polson. The lighter blue at the bottom is near Rollins, and then the darker blue at the top is near Summers. And so what we can see is that in all 3 of these cases, traffic volumes are increasing. And we calculated an average annual growth rate over this 20-year time period of about 2.1%. So we are seeing those increasing traffic volumes throughout our corridor. In terms of seasonal variation, so as we all know, this is a very popular area for recreation, and it makes sense that we're seeing more traffic volumes in the summertime. So July, August time periods, we are seeing a peak in those traffic volumes. A lot of activity and recreation in this area in the summertime. I'll move next to crash characteristics, so the safety aspect of this corridor. We receive crash data from MDT from their database, and we looked over a 5-year time period. This was the most recent crash data that was available to us for this study. And so over the 2018 to 2022 period, there were 814 total crashes in this corridor. I'll share a number of characteristics here about those crashes. So at the top left here, we have a bar chart just showing the months. It's actually lower in the springtime. So March, April, May, you can see that we have lower numbers of crashes, kind of increasing as we get farther along in the year. Peaks of the number of crashes in July and October, and then it starts to drop it down a little bit again in the wintertime. Day of the week is on the top right-hand corner, pretty evenly distributed throughout the week, although we do see a little bit of a jump in crashes on Fridays. So that is evident. And then in terms of times of day, we are showing both weekday and weekend crashes. And during the weekday especially, we see a peak in those crashes during commute periods. So that morning commute time, there's a higher number of crashes. And then again, it's a little bit less of a pronounced peak, but we do see an increase in the evening commute hour times as well.
Sir, could I ask a question about the month, your month bar graphs?
Of course.
Is there, can you identify, like, say, on those top 2 months, July and October, is that related to, like, July? I'm just assuming that's alcohol related. And then October, I'm assuming that's wildlife related. Is that wrong, or is that?
It certainly could be, and we can look deeper at the data to see about those correlations. I do have another slide here that talks about impairment in a couple of slides here, so I will touch on that, and then also wildlife as well. But you're right, there are some ways that we can correlate time periods when these crashes are occurring, and then what some of the contributing factors are. So great comment. Next, I'll touch on severity of crashes. So MDT categorizes crashes by the type of injury that results. And of those 814 crashes that I mentioned, there were 1,638 people involved in those. And of those, 9 of the crashes were fatal, and there were 9 fatalities involved in those. Serious injury, there were 28 crashes, and then 33 serious injuries. Minor or possible injury, 125 crashes, 193 injuries. And then the last category is what's called property damage only. And that was the bulk of the crashes. So 652 crashes and 1,403 individuals that were involved that didn't sustain an injury. On the right-hand side of this slide, we're showing a map of the location of crashes in the corridor, and we've called out in blue dot where there's a suspected serious injury, and then a red cross for a fatal crash. And you can see they're pretty well distributed throughout the corridor. We are seeing a little bit more of a concentration in the northern portion of the corridor, and especially Lakeside, where we're seeing that kind of orange, yellow cluster. And this is where there are greater traffic volumes up toward the north compared to the south. Couple other slides here on crash characteristics. So we can look at things like the weather and the road surface and lighting associated with crashes. In terms of weather, most of the crashes were happening when it was either cloudy or clear. Some of them were occurring when it was wet or snowy, but a much smaller percentage. In terms of road surface, a lot of them were happening during when the roads were dry, so 72%, with snow and ice about 13%, and wet roads 13% as well. And then lighting, most were happening during the daytime, daylight conditions, 55%. 36% were occurring at night when it was dark and there was no lighting on the roadway. And then 1% happened when it was dark and there was some type of roadway lighting. And the last category is 8%, some other time of day, dawn or dusk. Another thing that we can look at in terms of crash characteristics is the person details. And Vice Chairman, this gets to your comment earlier about impairment. So the reporting officers do take information about the state of the driver at the time of the crash. We know that most of the crashes were involving male drivers, about 62%, compared to female drivers, 38%. Impairment was a big component. So only 6% of all crashes, but 32% of those more severe crashes. So that would be involving a fatality or a serious injury. Young drivers were involved in about 10% of crashes or 9% of severe crashes. And then older drivers were involved in 17% of crashes or 21% of severe crashes. And then the last, at the bottom right-hand side of the slide, we have some other actions that were identified by the reporting officer as contributing to that crash. So 13% of crashes involved some type of distraction on the part of the driver. We have a cell phone icon, but that could be any other type of distraction that's involved. So just someone being inattentive or careless while driving. And then 10% of crashes involved a driver going too fast for conditions. Doesn't necessarily mean they were exceeding the speed limit, but it could be wet or slushy or icy roadways, and they needed to slow down for those conditions.
So you're telling me that if we prohibit females from driving, we would reduce the crashes by 32%? Sorry. I just had it, sorry.
Thanks for that comment, Vice Chairman. And to your other comment or question about wild animal conflicts, we wanted to present this slide. So we do have access to MDT's carcass database. So these are wild animal carcasses that are collected on the side of the road. We split this out into two different charts. On the left-hand side, we're looking at deer. And this is the vast majority of carcasses that are collected on the road. So 2,443 total carcasses during the time period that we looked at. And again, the vast majority were deer. I think it was 87% white-tailed deer, and then an additional 3% mule deer. And again, we're seeing that concentration up near the north, especially near between Lakeside and Summers area. On the right-hand side, we're showing icons. So we've got black dots, the green square, the blue triangle, and the red circle. These are all indicating other types of large animals. So there have been incidents involving elk and black bear, domestic animals, that might be a cow or a steer, and then other types of wild animals that are struck in the corridor.
Seems like it has a direct relationship of where people can hunt and where people can't hunt. Right?
It could well be, yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean, urban interface, nobody's hunting in Lakeside.
Exactly,
So,
yeah. I will note too that these are just based on what's collected, so it's likely an undercount of animal strikes. There could be animals that are just not detected, that are not incorporated in this database. Couple more slides here, just talking about our baseline conditions and some of the key findings that we've identified so far. So we have taken a close look at the natural environment within this corridor, and we prepared what's called an environmental scan. So it's a planning level overview of environmental conditions in the corridor. And this document has been shared with our advisory committee. We do have tribal members participating in that. Whisper is a member of our advisory committee as well. So we just greatly appreciate the input from the tribes on the natural environment. And first off, of course, we are along the western shore of the Flathead Lake, and that being a very big influence in this corridor. And along with that, there are multiple streams and associated wetlands within our corridor. And those are all important sensitive resources that MDT strives to avoid or minimize impacts during project development. Along with these kind of areas, there's, of course, habitat for quite a variety of species, including, I mentioned elk, deer, bear, and these are all showing up in our wild animal conflicts with vehicles. In addition to that, there are quite a number of small mammals, raptors, amphibians, reptiles, and aquatic species. So all of these species have a value and are very important sensitive species. And so again, looking to minimize impacts to habitat and to individual animals. In addition to kind of habitat, there's broader connectivity for other species. So things like lynx and grizzly bear and wolverine we know travel through this corridor, even if they don't use it as primary habitat. We'll note too that our environmental scan identified a number of protected species that just are at heightened sensitivity or risk. And so we've identified all of those. It's good background information for MDT as if a potential future project were to proceed, they have this great baseline of information on important resources that need to be protected and impacts minimized. So in addition to the natural environment, we also.
One question on the
yes, of course.
species. Did you have any grizzly bear deaths at all?
You know, I
identified?
think in our database, I'm just going to go back to this animal carcass. I think it was only black bear that was captured in the carcass database, but again, that likely isn't undercounted. So
There were no moose?
did not have any moose. Nope.
If I may, the carcass data is logged by our MDT staff, but we know there's a fair number of animals that are struck and get either close to the edge of the right of way or actually are able to get away from the right of way. So staff typically only picks up the critters that are in pretty close proximity to the road where they can be a distraction, unless it's in a more of a, if there's a home nearby or something, we'll get something that's further down in the ditch. But if we're in a more of a rural setting, those animals that are laying down in the ditch where they're not a hazard or a distraction, we tend to leave them lay where they are. There are some in areas where we're concerned about if they're going to attract other animals. Those areas we do pick up all the critters that are in the right of way though as well. So, but that does lead to some of that undercount as well, because we know there's a lot of animals that are hit and, you know, make it beyond the right of way limit before they perish. So.
Thank you, Bob. I guess that leads me to the question of fish, wildlife, and parks and the salvage permits. Are those included in this also?
Don't believe so.
I don't think they are. This is the animals that are picked up by our staff that's
So
logged.
the public that picks up that has a deer hunt or elk permit, those aren't counted in this? Okay.
Yeah, that's a great point. I don't think that we're utilizing that data. I'm not, we can reach out to FWP and figure out what that might look like.
They issue those permits and yeah, you
Right.
gotta you have to be a hunter with a deer license and then you can salvage that. deer
Yeah, and
right
I'm not
away.
sure if they log the exact location or what that looks like. So we'll have to see I'm not familiar. I know it's available to folks, but I'm not sure what data FWP captures and how they log that as well. And then the other thing that I wanted to state is the crash data. Our database is populated by crashes that are documented by some form of a law enforcement agency. So there's a lot of crashes that take place where law enforcement isn't notified as well.
Thank you, Bob.
The last couple slides here, just wanted to touch on the human environment as well. So in addition to the natural environment, we are looking at the human population within this corridor. And I mentioned earlier that there has been quite a bit of growth and development. We had a 2.1% increase in traffic volumes in this corridor. That really does correspond with annual population growth. So we were able to look at census data for Lake and Flathead counties, and we're kind of seeing similar trends, about 1.6 to 2% per year annual population growth in those counties. We know this is a really diverse area. There's quite a lot of sectors that are involved in the economy. So really important role for tourism and outdoor recreation. And as part of that, there are a number of recreational sites that are specifically designated that we've identified in this corridor. A number of state parks and fishing access sites, quite a few tribal and local recreational sites as well. And then, of course, we have the Flathead Waterfowl Production Area and then additional private or commercial recreation sites. So a lot of human activity relating to recreation in this corridor. Lastly, I'll just mention that we did take a very close look at historic and cultural resources. As part of this study, we had a sub-consultant, Ethnotech, do in-depth planning level review of sites in the corridor and identified sites that had been previously documented. And so these were both historic and prehistoric cultural sites, and identifying whether they were eligible or not eligible for listing on the National Register. So we have a really good baseline of information. One of the things that came out of that reporting is that there are some highly sensitive tribal heritage properties near Elmo and Dayton and Rollins areas. So again, really good background information if a project were to move forward for MDT. I will say too, though, that a lot of these sites were documented in years past. So if any new ground disturbing projects were to move forward, new and updated cultural and tribal historic surveys would be needed at that time. So that information would be updated. So last couple slides here, wanted to touch on our study schedule. I mentioned that we are partway through this study. We have just completed our existing and projected conditions review initially, and we're coming out to all of you, the Tribal Council, as well as the public. We have a couple of public meetings scheduled the next 2 days. So on Wednesday, we'll be in Polson for a public meeting, and then on Thursday, we'll be in Summers for a public meeting. And welcome all tribal members and all members of the public to join us for those meetings. It's an opportunity to view exhibits with some of the same information that we're presenting to you today, and opportunity to talk with the MDT study team and ask questions and provide any comments or concerns about this corridor. So we're hoping for a good turnout at those meetings. From there, once we complete the public informational meetings, we'll be moving into that improvement options step where we're trying to identify potential solutions for the corridor to address some of the needs and concerns that we've identified. So with that, just want to thank you all again, Vice Chairman and Tribal Council members, for the opportunity to present to you today. Happy to answer any other questions that you all have.
Go ahead, Len.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the council. Sarah, thank you for that presentation. Thank you all for joining us this morning also too. We really appreciate these types of updates on these important projects. We haven't had these types of projects up north for some time now, so we're really looking forward to this. I would really like to invite you to the Kootenai Elders meeting and to give an update on this project. I think they would be greatly appreciative of this. They meet the second Wednesday of every month at the Elmo Hall. If you can, and your contact is going to be Vernon Finley. If you can arrange time to get on the agenda, I think they would really like that. But I just wanted to bring up a couple important projects that the Tribal Council has been discussing for some time, and one of them is the newly Elmo store. We're gonna be we're in the early planning phases of putting a store on the north side of Highway 28 and the junction of 28 and 93 on the north side. And so egress, ingress from all three directions is going to be a huge issue. And so we really like to engage MDOT on how we can work together on getting safe accesses into those sites. In addition to that, we've also been wanting to engage MDOT about egress, ingress into the Big Arm Resort. That's been an issue for some years since we've had it open now. And we really can't plan or design new accesses in there until we're able to work with MDOT on design. You know, because that's going to be extremely dangerous as traffic increases during the summer months. And just surprised and grateful that we haven't had a lot of accidents right there in that particular area. So I just wanted to bring those up because I think at some point in time we would like to set up a meeting with you all and see what needs to happen to make this happen. So we're all on the same page. I also want to share one one of many complaints that I've received from the community members in Elmo is how we can slow traffic down during the summer months, because as we all know, when school is out, kids are headed to the lake and a lot of them have to cross the highway. And we would like to see more signs, warning lights, crossings, et cetera, to try to slow the traffic down. We really appreciate MHP for posting up there when they do, because that does make a big difference. That does slow people down when they see them parked there. So, but if that's something we could implement into the future designs of this particular project, that's something we would really want to advocate for. So we look forward to continued discussions and meetings with you all. And, you know, I really like to see you engage the Kootenai elders, because I know that they have a lot of input on how we can help with the design of this segment of the highway. So, thank you.
Thank you for those comments. We really appreciate it. We will absolutely follow up on the Kootenai elders, so thank you for that. And to your point about needing to slow down traffic, I think that's exactly the feedback that we're hoping to hear from community members along this corridor. So great timing for us to consider that as part of the study. Thank you.
Any other comments from council for? Yeah, go ahead, Bob.
Yeah, Mr. Vice Chairman, members, I guess one thing that I just want to point out, again, really appreciate the interaction, the suggestions, the concerns. And with these study of this, I mean, this is a massive study. This is going to be many, many projects as we move forward. Just what we're going to be looking at is, you know, kind of thinking of it in a time frame from a project standpoint is what can we do? You know, what's our near term, what's our midterm, what's our long-term projects, and what can we come up with? As every time I'm in here, I'm talking about the funding challenges that we're facing, and prices are climbing faster than traffic growth is. So trying to figure out what can we do, you know, with what's the low-hanging fruit, if you will? What can we implement the quickest that's going to have some really good benefits to the communities that we're impacting, the traveling public? So again, really appreciate the comments, the ideas, and please continue to reach out, as we will as well. So again, thank you very much for the time today.
Thank you, Bob. Thank you, Sarah, Jackson, Joel. Thank you. Good presentation. And yeah, please attend the Kootenai Elders Committee. That'd be great. Thank you. Next on the agenda is Legal Department. Go ahead, Glenn.
In regards to that, I have two important resolutions regarding land acquisitions from tribal members that we've been waiting on for some time that I would like to get action on from council, and that would be for L. Sloan and Frank Pierre. And Jay Blue sent those resolutions through email to all the council.
Well, let's go ahead and I think we'll take care of this first one with Shane's resolution for the tribal flag and seal. Motion by Len, seconded by Martin. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? All right. That one passes. And then Len's brought up motions for these other resolutions I got to dig up.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, they were resolutions to authorize the purchase of trust property from tribal elder L. Sloan. at the appraised value. And I would make that motion. These were acquisitions that have already been addressed at the land committee. It's just part of the process so we can get them paid. And as I mentioned before, Al's been waiting for 2 years to get this completed.
Motion by Len to approve the resolution authorizing the purchase of trust land located in Lake County, referred to allotment 1181-A. Yeah, go ahead, Martin.
So what makes this different than what we already did? We already showed interest. We already did. Is this just to pay him?
What is different is legal suggested that they take off the life estate, and so what they're going to do rather than a life estate is just do a home site lease.
Yeah, Brian's been reviewing this file for us, Councilman Charlo. So, yeah.
Second by Martin. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all is in favor?
Aye.
Okay, that's 6-4. Carol's out of the room. Motion passes. And then the second one is same thing. Is that what you're? That one's been through legal review too, Dan?
Yes, Brian reviewed this one as well.
Okay.
Yep.
Motion by Len. Approve the resolution authorizing purchase of allotment 1659. Second by Danielle. Any further discussion? See none, all is in favor?
Aye.
Martin? Okay, it's 6-4, one out of the room. Carol? Okay, you bet. We'll move back into executive.
Hi, good afternoon. This is Kim Varlick. I'm not sure if you all can hear me. Kim Varlick, I'm the Tribal Affairs Branch.
Yes, Kim, we
Manager
can hear
with-
you. We hear you very
Great.
well. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you. Thanks.
All right, we'll get started. Welcome, everybody.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, members of council. I'm here with the Environment Protection Agency Region 8 Administrator, Casey Becker, along with EPA staff. And we're going to talk about the Columbia Falls Aluminum Company site cleanup. So I'll go ahead and let Casey talk.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Council. We appreciate the opportunity to meet with you today. Could we start by just letting everyone from EPA, either at the table or in the audience, introduce themselves? Is that
Absolutely.
appropriate?
You
Okay.
bet, Casey. Thank you.
So I'm Casey Becker. I'm the Regional Administrator for EPA Region 8. I came up with Kim Verlick, I want to say it was April of 2022. I had been appointed maybe, I don't know, 6 or 8 months beforehand, and was happy to meet with you all then. Glad to be back. And I won't say much more. I'll let the team introduce themselves, and then I'll make a few more remarks.
Good afternoon. I'm Aaron Urdialis. I'm the Division Director for the Superfund Emergency Management Division for all of Region 8. So just glad to be here.
Yeah, Matt Dorrington with EPA. I'm the remedial project manager for the Columbia Falls aluminum site. I've also got a couple other sites in Montana, but I was here last in June. We had a chance to meet, and I shared with you the proposed plan EPA released in June of 2023. And so happy to be back and answering additional questions you might have. Thanks for having me.
Matt is going to do the bulk of our presentation. I just first wanted to say that we recognize and value the role that the tribe has as a trustee. Oops, excuse me. Let me silence that. And the relationship that EPA has with the tribe on a government-to-government basis. And so the trustees have a different, have an important role in CERCLA, different than EPA, but it's important that EPA coordinate with the trustees in which you all run. This is a Superfund site that EPA has been involved with in a long time, and for a long time, we're close to a record of decision, but the record of decision is just one step 5 actually, in a 9-step process. So after a ROD is issued, EPA then enters into negotiations with the PRP, the potentially responsible party, and works towards a consent decree to implement the selected remedy. So I highlight that because the record of decision is not by any means the final stage for public input, for tribal input, for trustee input into the process. It really just, once a ROD is signed, then we work towards a consent decree and we start doing remedial design. And it always surprises people how long the Superfund process is. But throughout it, there's lots of opportunities for public engagement. But we just really appreciate the opportunity to hear from you, all of your thoughts about it, present, the proposed plan now, and just have this opportunity for engagement. So with that,
Can I ask a question, Casey?
Yeah.
So, is this formal consultation then, what you're doing right now?
my understanding is this is formal consultation. That's what you all requested,
Okay.
and I am here for formal consultation. And
So if you're in the final stages to issue a record of decision, I've been in NEPA a long time. So how, if this is formal consultation, how is this a meaningful process for us? I mean, how are you going to really consider our issues and recommendations at this late stage of your process that you're in right now?
Sure. I think that the tribes, through staff, have been engaging for a long time, and we've provided lots of opportunities. But when you all requested formal consultation is when we said, yes, we got to get up here. But as I mentioned, there's lots of, Superfund is a long and involved process. So there's, there will be ongoing opportunities for consultation and for input, again, on a government to government basis and as a trustee throughout the many additional steps to the Superfund process.
I just gotta say this, because you're here and I want to be brutally honest with you. I have high respect for you. When I look at this and I look at how it started out, I have definite issues with large companies like Glencore. They have horrific record, terrible record. I have to find, I don't even know if I could find someone with a worse record. And this process kind of started out with them leading it, up there, and community involvement and everything. And that looked like right away, it's biased. It's again led by the industry. And so how can we have an outcome that's even worth participating in? Because it's not like it's just EPA leading the whole charge. There's this company coming forward. And so that's just a huge, huge red flag for me. And I don't know how I can even possibly overcome it.
Thank you for the question. I think that the Superfund process, the goal in Congress passing CERCLA was to ultimately get sites cleaned up, but was to have the responsible parties on the hook for paying for the cleanup. And so, Matt and Aaron can talk more about this, but when we have a responsible party, they are responsible for, in this instance, for conducting the cleanup. And so they are absolutely part of the process in terms of, if there wasn't a responsible party, we wouldn't, then it really is EPA and directly with our engagement with interested parties and stakeholders. But we have a responsible party and we have to hold them to account for cleaning up the property and, doing everything that we tell them to do. But Matt and Aaron, I think, are the experts on the actual process, and I'm happy to, if you don't mind, turn it, okay, go ahead.
Well, I understand all that and agree with it 100%. But that doesn't mean they lead the public involvement or they, it's just their data that we're using or their information that they're generating. I expect EPA to be the ones that would lead the public involvement and also, have that data available all the time for all of us as stakeholders or trustees or whatever to be actually from day one. And it doesn't appear that this has happened this way. And that's an issue for me. So thank you.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, if I could, just a few words and then I'll give it to Aaron here. I've been at the site for about 1.5 years. So I've had lots of time to examine the administrative record and the history of the site. And I understand what you're saying. PRP-led sites throughout the nation, that's a concern, right? This perspective that while the PRP is paying for it, that they're hiring the contractors. But I assure you at this site, this was done with heavy oversight from EPA and DEQ. And the administrative record's pretty clear on that. Numerous rounds of reviews and edits and feedbacks and do-overs and get it rights. The government, EPA and DEQ have been heavily involved. And so, but to address your concern about the community liaison panel, which was created in 2015, Glencore reached out to a number of stakeholders, including CSKT, and invited members to attend. And again, examining the record, those meetings were held by Glencore, attended by EPA project managers and DEQ. The perception I think you're alluding to is the fact that they were setting up the agenda and they were reviewing it. But those meetings, the records of the meetings, the presentations are all available on the website. We could all go back and look at the history and the material that was covered. So I think, in my view, in my estimation, it was very transparent. And could we have done better? Always. But
well, that goes to the participation level, right? I mean, why would you participate? Why would you? You're not even getting the input from everybody because Glencore's leading the charge. So how is that a meaningful public engagement? That's my issue. It's not that the meeting was went right and everything was presented correctly, but how are you getting the full breadth of everybody that wanted to participate, the whole community or interest levels? And it's led by the polluter themselves or the responsible party, that we want them to clean it up and take ownership to it.
I understood, Mr. Chair, and one other observation, I think the beauty about Superfund is its transparentness. The remedial investigation, which is an effort to characterize the extent and nature of all the contamination, that remedial investigation is hundreds of pages long. It's a lot of information, but that information is visible, it's transparent. Superfund process itself, going through feasibility study, looking at cleanup alternatives, and the thought process, the decisions behind that is all transparent and available for anyone to read. And those meetings, I think, were focused at stopping at certain milestones, summarizing progress to date, taking feedback from the public, those, as again, who, like you said, who chose to participate and be present and provide feedback. So those opportunities are there. And again, I think the beauty of this process is that all of that information is laid to bear and anyone can see it.
Yeah, but the unbeauty of the process is that we weren't there participating and a lot of other people were not. So there's the tremendous flaw from the get-go. We're here right now. So like, can we back up? And can we go back to 2015, start over?
Well, again, I think we reached out about 2 months before the EPA released this proposed plan. So in April of 2023, reached out to the tribes, invited them to participate in the process, 10 meetings, and look at the EPA's proposed plan and participate in that 90-day public comment period. So we see that in the Columbia Falls community. Historically, we had about a dozen people attend meetings in the public. It's hard to get folks interested, get them out there, and you want to go around knocking on doors. We just don't have the resources to do that. So it's very much relying on doing our best to communicate.
I'm not talking about some homeowner up there. I'm talking about the Confederated CSKT tribes. This is our Aboriginal territory. We have a supreme stakes in this whole thing. So I would expect that we'd be treated differently than those other folks knocking on their doors. I mean, that's my point.
Yes, sir. I hear you. If I could just, sorry, this is a presentation. It's largely the same information I shared with you in June. It's the same information. We had a good meeting with Chauncey and his technical team. Last week, we covered a lot of this. We talked a bit about the risks and impacts to the river and whatnot. So it's 23 sides. If I want to get through it, we need about an hour, but I'm going to leave it up to you, Mr. Chair and council members. If this is something you want to go over again, I'm happy to do that. If you want us to listen and just, whatever format you want to adopt, I'm happy. I'm flexible.
Ask my colleagues up here, but I don't need to go through it again. But if they want to look through it or glance through it quickly, I'm not objecting to that. It's up to we certainly can if you'd like. You want to consult? Okay, we'll take a quick break. We'll be right back. Yeah, go ahead, Len.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the council. I think at this time, I do not want to go through the plan again. We're talking about our Aboriginal homeland here. And I don't want to look at this as consultation because of the fact that we don't believe that plan is going to work. Until we're proven otherwise, proven with scientific fact that this will work, we're not going to jump on board with it. And we certainly do not want to see any kind of record of decision made. We need some more time. This is a very, very sensitive topic to the tribes. And I just feel that there's other options that we need to look at. We're talking about cyanide that's going to be there for the rest of our lifetimes. How that's going to affect not only our water, but our fish, our wildlife. everything around us, everything that's surrounding us. So that's my feeling about it. I don't know if we need to proceed any further with this topic, but right now I'm not convinced that the plan that was presented in front of us is the plan that's for the people. So, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Lynn. Any other comments from our consult? Yeah, I agree. I appreciate the presentation that we've had last time. And Casey. Yeah, I wish I could feel the same confidence level that, let's say, Matt has. I certainly don't. You've heard that from me, already. I have zero confidence in Glencore. And that's the huge thing. I know that EPA's oversight will demand that they're restoring to the level we want, but this is the main stem of our river, of our lake. And so we got to get to that, not that this is undying faith in technology, that we think a slurry wall can work and we can cap this and leave it in play and it's gonna work. We need to get that 100% confidence interval. That's where we need to be. Otherwise, we want to have it removed. We want to have it removed and contained in an appropriate fashion, not hidden underground where we don't know where the groundwater is going. We don't know what's going on, if it's actually working. Those are the kind of confidence things that we would really appreciate too. But, trusting everybody is, that's what we've always done. But we need to trust and verify. We really actually need to be able to provide our own experts to lay eyes on this and let's study this more, the proposal, the preferred proposal, and look at the other options and really determine that they're unreasonable, unprudent, dismissed, or whatever you want to call it. But are they feasible? Can they be done? Because we want to get to that 100% confidence interval for us. So we really need to be able to look at it a lot more, and we need the resources to be able to look at it. And I have to tag this right along with the huge Elk River mining going on up in the Elk River Valley. And again, we really have this protectable interest in resources that we've been charged to protect in perpetuity from our elders and from our ancestors. And the water is sacred. It doesn't get any more important to us. So to have that 100%, we actually need some more resources to be able to trust everybody. And so I know we applied for some funding for the Columbia River toxins and grant, and with Kootenai Tribe Vital, we were not successful in getting that grant. So we actually need some more resources to help verify for Chauncey and Company et al. To be able to come to us, and he has a 100% confidence interval. And so it would be nice to be able to have some more resources that the tribes could utilize for this off-reservation concerns that we have and resources that we need to protect. We certainly value the work that EPA does. Don't get me wrong. We love the work that you do, and we appreciate you coming here and making this part of your consultation. But as I said before, I think true meaningful consultation it's reflective in the record of decision. And it appears to me that you're already to the point where you're ready to do the record of decision. And then you're saying that maybe the details of our considerations would be in the rest of the work plans that come after that. And so that's just really difficult for us to be able to absorb that and to have that as part of the true consultation process. And are we really being listened to? Go ahead, Casey.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. So of any input that the tribe has absolutely will be reflected in the record of decision. I think it's a critical part of the record of decision. What I'm hearing from you is that you want 100% of verification, and I am not sure how to get that to you. I mean, I think Matt really is the expert and he can make any other experts available. So I don't know how else than him sort of walking through, talking to you all about the proposal. I don't know how to get you to that 100%. And we are in a place where we're trying to accommodate some very different
input from a variety of people. So at some point we have to make a decision, and we have, different congressionals saying different things, and, different elected folks saying different things. Obviously, the tribe has a special role, again, as its own government and as a trustee, but we need to know what the path is to get you to the place that you want to be.
We need more time. We need more time to study this. We need the resources to be able to study this and verify that all of your due diligence is what we believe is correct. And that's what we need. So it may be the outcome is we concur with what you're proposing or what Glencore's proposed and you're condoning. But we're not there right now. There's no way we're there right now. And given I think your public involvement, I'm not sure you have a couple of different cities, maybe some things going on there, but I think your engagement there's a lot of concern, the public out there. And maybe even the majority of public comment goes towards the concern for your proposal. So that's a concern for us also. It should be a concern for you.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. Are there questions that we're here now? Aaron and I, Kelly and Ben have flown up. Matt lives nearby, but we want to make sure that since we are here now, we're using the best time, that we're making best use of the time that we have with you. So I think I know Matt has some handouts. If he could pass those out and maybe sort of just go over a couple key things, I think that would be just a good use of the time since
Oh,
we're
sure,
here.
absolutely. Thank you.
Yeah. Mr. Chair and members of the council, thank you. Let me just go back a bit. As I mentioned earlier, EPA releases a proposed plan, EPA's proposed plan in June of 2023. There's been some recent communication about this being Glencore's plan. That's not true. Glencore, with its contractor RU, developed the remedial investigation and feasibility study, which was reviewed and approved by the agencies. In EPA's proposed plan, selecting the proposed plan, we did make changes to make it more protective. And so that is reflected in the proposed plan. Following the release of the proposed plan, we had 90 days of public comment. We received over 700 comments, similar to what you're saying today. Comments we've received there are themes. And there are themes that have emerged, similar comments around certain themes. What I've done in working with EPA's contractor, CDM Smith, is develop fact sheets on those key themes. So what is a slurry wall? How's it designed? Where has it been used? Quote, studies by both EPA and private consultants on work with slurry walls over the years. So that's reflected, that's just an example in these fact sheets. And so I think they're a good read. I brought some last time I was here, but I'll certainly make sure and leave more copies. There's a fact sheet now on reuse and redevelopment. What does reuse for the site look like in the future, post-remedy? So a lot of really good information. I encourage you to read those. And that's really a quick read or fast study, if you will, on some of the inputs and impetus behind what's in the proposed plan. I did prepare some slides. We had a really good meeting with the technical team. I think and Chauncey, correct me if I'm wrong, but the key themes there were what are the impacts to the river? And so we went back and we peeled back sections of the baseline ecological risk assessment, human health risk assessment, and talked about that. Bottom line is there are in the sampling we did during the remedial investigation, there is no cyanide or fluoride detected in the sediments of the Flathead River. And the sample record reflects that. Now there's a backwater area, riparian backwash area, where there are elevated cyanide and fluoride levels. They do not come or meet or exceed the threshold of human health. So there's no human health risk there. There is an eco risk and aquatic toxicity concern. And that's really what's driving the remedy. In looking at all the alternatives and ways to change that plume, the slurry wall was the preferred alternative. It is the preferred alternative at this point. It basically keeps groundwater from contacting the source of cyanide and fluoride. There's an inward gradient maintained so that we can detect if there's a breach or a leak or a crack, and we can make repairs to that if necessary. So that is our preferred plan. Again, looking at all the alternatives that were evaluated, and it's quite robust and it's a heavy read. That's EPA's recommended or preferred alternative going forward. Now, I want to make one other comment. You know, in June or January or February, the Coalition for a Clean CFAC, you're familiar with it, formed, right? And they sat down with the agencies. Aaron was there, and Ben and others, and we had a good talk with them. And basically, they said, we're new to the site. Many of our members have never been involved, right? And we've reached out to a broader community, and there's a broader community that wants to know what the heck's been going on in the last 8 years. And so that wasn't really a call to action for the agency to come to the table, do more community engagement, do some deep dive sessions. And so since February, I've been in Columbia Falls at least every month. We've had multiple community meetings, poster sessions. These are kind of opportunities, open houses, thank you, opportunities for people to come in. We had over 20 different slides that we pulled and created posters of. And Mr. Ryan Ruski, a member of the tribe here, was there, and I met him, and he and I spent about an hour talking from the beginning to the end of the whole process and walking him through that. We did that with over 200 community members. So I mentioned earlier in the past, maybe a dozen people from the community would show up. We had over 200 people show up. And that deep dive was outstanding. I can't tell you how many times I started from the beginning and ended, and people said, oh, we get it. Thank you for taking the time to explain that. And so for me personally, it was very rewarding. It was an opportunity to really understand the project much better. And so I share that because that's an example. I think that's where I feel we're at with you all now is wanting to maybe do that deep dive. I'm prepared to do that if we need to. And I think we've done that with great success in the last 6 months. So I'm up for the challenge, and I think we can get you all there.
So the Glencore is a responsible party, and they're responsible for the cleanup. It's not anybody else. It's not gonna be on the taxpayers' back. And you know, our resources, our treaty resources, the treaty is the highest supreme law of the land. And you are required to do an assessment of all of our treaty resources based on your consultation. And I'm sure you've done that, but probably not. So the important thing is that the river is always wider than it seems. I learned that from one of our medicine men a long time ago, Mitch Smallson, talking about hydropower development on our lower Flathead River. So the extent of the reach of this aluminum plant and what's left in the ground is really important to be assessed correctly and being dealt with. So what is wrong with digging up the whole thing and containing it and storing it above ground so you know and you can see what's going on, since they're paying for it?
Mr. Chair, that's a great question, and that was evaluated at length. It's in the feasibility study. I've actually created a fact sheet on it as well, just to hit the high points. First of all, I also want to point out that before releasing the proposed plan, EPA consulted with headquarters. So the folks out of Washington, D.C. are our experts, pool of experts, for 6 months to look at what we were proposing. And they got behind it, and that's why we moved forward. But one of the things they uncovered is there's 9 other aluminum smelters, former smelters in the Pacific Northwest. Every one of them has spent potliner buried. Every one of them left it there for the same reasons that we concluded in the feasibility study and the proposed plan. And primarily concern, Chairman, is when you excavate this, there's a great risk to the people doing the work. Generates cyanide gas, other explosive gases. It's a very risky job. Can it be done? Absolutely. I mean, we could mitigate those risks, but when comparing alternatives, that is one of the most risky of all alternatives. The waste itself is a RCRA hazardous waste. It was declared that in the mid-80s. So it hasn't been buried in the ground since the 1980s. What's there is what was left from 1955 to the mid-80s. But to dispose of that hazardous waste requires a RCRA hazardous waste facility. The nearest one is 500 miles away. We reached out to that facility and talked about the logistics, the cost, what would it take to get that done? It's 5 to 7 years of risky work. You're going to have to stabilize it. So once you remove it, you have to dilute it in a sense. So you're creating more waste. The volume of waste increases. Getting it on a rail car, transporting it 500 miles for 5 to 7 years. The volume is tremendous. 1.5 million cubic yards of waste is estimated. There are other risks. There are concerns about, the carbon footprint of that. There's concerns about digging a pit. So a 50 feet, let's imagine, 50 feet deep pit with walls 3-to-1 ratio, right? Because you got to be able to get people and equipment in there safely. The footprint of this now becomes a 300-foot wide, roughly, hole that fills with groundwater and rainwater over the course of 5 years. So that water would have to be pumped, treated, and then re-injected or discharged to the surface. The risk of making the contamination footprint much larger is great. Again, one of the more riskiest alternatives that were considered. And those are just a few of the things that come to mind. There were other concerns that were evaluated. These were all evaluated early in the remediation or design phase, feasibility study phase, against certain criteria. So those are the highlights. That answer your question?
No, it doesn't, but it does in a way, but I really don't care the cost because we only have one river. We only have one land. We don't make new flathead rivers. We don't make new flathead lakes. And so I could care less if it costs Glencore $10 billion. I really don't care about that. What I care about is the absolute cleanup of our environment that's jeopardizing our resources and our people for the next millennia, not the next 5 to 7 years. And where there's a will, there's a way. We can protect human health and safety. We do it all the time on a daily basis on cleanup sites. Whether a person has to suit up or whatever, so be it. You can expedite this as fast as you want to. You put the resources to it. You don't have to have that pond fill up 5 years in a row. You're talking about how big of a pit? We're not talking about a huge pit here. We're not talking about a volume of land. And so I just have a hard time seeing how you would dismiss that as unfeasible because it's going to cost the company too much money, or you think it causes some health risks for immediate workers. Those immediate workers can be taken care of. It's the long-term health risks that we're talking about to our river. When that cyanide does breach this slurry wall technology and enters the river, what are we going to do then? We're going to go try to fix it? I don't know. What are your bonds for this cleanup? And what are you talking about long-term? You're leaving this for a legacy for my great grandchildren to endure. So that's my problem. That's my risk.
I do want to, Mr. Chairman, speak towards that. You have mentioned Glencore a couple times and what the long-term plan is. As Casey mentioned when we first started, is that a CD will be required to be signed by them through the Department of Justice. That would put them on the hook for perpetuity and outline the responsibility and liability that they have for whatever remedy selected and ensuring that that remedy stays protective and functioning as it's designed to do for long term. There will be a public comment period as part of that consent decree and an opportunity for engagement through the community and discussions about what that looks like, whatever the end remedy ends being. So I just want to make that clear that there's also another opportunity on the impacts of whatever is signed and agreed to with Glencore through the consent decree for the tribe to be able to give input and information into what goes into that.
Mr. Chair, one more just point. Those are great comments. I appreciate the feedback. That spin pipeline has been in the ground since the mid-'80s. You're looking at the worst today. That's as worst as it's going to get, or as bad as it's going to get. The slurry wall just makes it better. Slurry wall is a proven technology. we've had lots of discussions in Columbia Falls. We brought an expert up who's done this for 30 to 40 years, 70 sites throughout the nation. And we feel confident that this is only going to make it better. And it will be protective of human health and the environment, which is the threshold. The concern with excavation, and it's also in there too, is that we're not going to be able to get it all. It's been in the ground for so long and in contact with groundwater for so long that we'll likely get maybe 80 to 90% of it. We'll be digging in this slurry, soupy mix. We'll always have a source. Maybe we can get it all, but not without all the risks that I mentioned. But we'll still have a source. And so we'll still be left then with determining how do you, in the future, mitigate that impact to the groundwater. Maybe do all that and you still install a slurry well, but it'll always be there.
Well, now you're talking. See, there's an option right there. Anyway, one of the critical points, Casey, is that we really need to be able to have the resources to evaluate this ourselves. I mean, it really, and I want to tag this right along with our international issues that we have up with the tech mining and now Glencore mining, and they want to expand and they want to do things up there, and it's the same company, and we're dealing with them impacting our resources in two different drainages, two of our most important drainages. And so it's troubling. It's difficult for us to deal with this, and we want to be confident that we're concurring with you in the right way, and that we've been heard, and that our requests have been dealt with in a very positive way, and reflected in the decision making. And we just don't have that confidence right now. So we would, if nothing else, give more time for you to think about our input, give us more time and maybe resources to evaluate your analysis and the company's information. And then before that, we consult again, and then you can go forward with your record of decision. That's best I can offer up at this point in time. We only have, again, I watched that whole damn plant my whole life. And I think I mentioned that last time you were here. My cousin worked there, and he's dead today from working at that plant. And so, I know I remember looking at the dead vegetation around the whole mountainside when that thing is in full operation. And it really was a troubling thing to have in our valley, on our Aboriginal lands. Just like when we look down at the pulp mill or other, Butte, Silver Bowl, all these impacts. And they're a legacy. I mean, they're leaving behind long-term effects, and it's our due diligence to try to remove that long-term effect as best we can, and with full force. And I concur and strongly support you making the bad actor pay for it all and do the right thing, because that's what they should be doing. So you have our full support with that, and no doubt about that. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. It's important for us to move quickly because, as Matt said, the pollution's not getting any better until we actually deal with it. And so, I know at the end of the day, everyone's goal is to deal with that pollution. I don't know how to get resources to you but we will talk about that as a team.
Yeah, maybe you can come up with some ideas. That'd be great. Any suggestions you have, we would take any of them, not all of them. Absolutely. That's really it, is do you have any suggestions for funding? It's really what I should be saying. It may not be directly from EPA, it could be whatever. We thought the Columbia River stuff was a good tool, could have been, but it wasn't. We thought we were going to get funded and we didn't. So.
Okay, we'll talk about that. And again, I just would be remiss if I didn't say, is there anything else while we have, Aaron, who leads our entire Superfund division here, while I'm here, any particular questions?
Well, if council doesn't, I would open it up to some of our staff or other department folks here if they have.
Mr. Chair,
Yeah, go ahead, James.
can you hear me all right?
Yep, hear you great.
Yeah, thank you for the discussion and thank you for hearing our strong words and comments, and I concur with them. I think one of the things that historically, this is our Aboriginal area. It's the area that we had given up to the United States to reserve for ourselves the reservation that we have now. And, that's why you're hearing all of the different strong comments from the vice chair and other council members, is that, when Butte and Anaconda and those areas were developed for mining, those folks, they really didn't care about anyone really, no matter what race you were, but particularly they didn't care about what the Aboriginal footprint was in that area. And so, we have an opportunity here to interject our views and try and stop what we see as something from history repeating itself, is the utter destruction that we've seen. I can remember traveling through Kellogg area in Idaho and seeing the barren landscape there, and now it's just now starting to grow trees and vegetation back. But I hear the issues on the slurry efforts, and I believe you've studied it. You all know that system, but for me, it just still kind of gives me pause, because I kind of look at what we have down at the down in Missoula there at the site there. I want to say Horner Waldorf, but it's not that. It's Murphy Stone area. But I'm cautious about it, and I appreciate you hearing us out and hearing our strong words and comments, and taking those into consideration. Thank you.
Thank you, James. Any other people online or in the room? Go ahead, Len.
Mr. Chairman, and I appreciate all of the comments that have been said. I think we as a council need to be really cognizant and move cautiously when we're going through these consultations. Being on council for 12 years, I've watched how this consultations have worked, and in a lot of cases, it's worked against us. And so I just wanted to mention that, because it's always, the odds are always stacked against us. Especially when we're talking about our Aboriginal territories. I mean, not once, and I could be wrong, not once has the historical or the stories have been told about that area, our creation stories, or what has happened in that area in the past before pre-settlement. A lot of the people in Columbia Falls are aware what went on up there. So that's how important it is to us. That's part of the property. That's probably the land that we gave up for our treaty. And then for us to sit over here and watch development take place over there, and it's taking place all over Western Montana, we have to speak up about it. We have to say something about it. We have to bring it to your attention. You guys need to hear it. And we really need to advocate for the resources my vice chairman mentioned, because it's stuff that we need. Stuff that we need to try to find out more about it. We need to educate ourselves more on this. So, but I just wanted to briefly mention that. So, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Len. Chelsea?
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chairman and EPA. Nice to thank you all for coming. And I just wanted to, I'm not a Superfund expert. I'm learning a lot here, but I just, I know there are some different interests at play up in, interest in developing part of the site. And so I just wonder if, and again, I'm not sure on the ins and outs of the Superfund process here, but wonder if there aren't any creative ways to sort of meet the different needs and maybe, separate the site out a little bit to to maybe make a decision on the, parts that aren't as contaminated, to maybe possibly, move those forward with a record of decision, maybe a different operable unit. I know it's all one big one, but I don't know if there's a way to, we're very concerned about you've heard council talk about, the contamination that is there. And so I don't know, you all know this process, but what I want to say is, I guess we're open to thinking creatively and brainstorming to meet all the different needs. So I know you're receiving, having different pressures and different desires here. You've heard councils, but if there's a way to creatively think about this to try to meet the different needs and relieve some pressure to move forward quickly, we're certainly open to working with you to think about that creatively. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Chelsea. Yeah, one of the things I mentioned before up in Canada was, and maybe this goes to your concern, things are happening right now. And there's a potential for bad things to happen right now. So it's like triage. What can we do right now? Maybe that's it. Maybe it is put in the slurry wall and then dig up and remove. Maybe that's the true remedy, that combination of those two things. So that's immediate triage and then the long-term, more certain security of removing the materials and absolutely getting them in a secure location so we can see them, can monitor it. So I don't know if that's, an alternative that would be a combination of those two, but certainly be interested in something like that.
Yeah, just thanks for the comments, Mr. Chair. They just reiterate, it's CPA's mission, our charge, my job, to clean up the site, right? Take it back direction that you're talking about, right? Remedy some of the past sins. That's what we're there for. It's got to be protective of human health and the environment. And Casey mentioned it earlier, and I think it's an important point. We're on a journey with the Superfund process. The record of decision is a milestone in that process. It allows us to move forward. It comes after looking at the site characterization, a detailed site characterization, considering very strongly a bunch of alternatives in light of what's prescribed by CERCLA law and those criteria we have to evaluate. Getting a record of decision allows us to move forward. Once we get past the CD and we get into remedial design, we get more data, more sampling, more geological data. We understand the finer details of the slurry wall design. If at any point during the remedial design or remedial action, we encounter things we did not expect and determine we can't meet the intent of the ROD, the Superfund process is adaptive in that way. We have to go back to the feasibility study. And Mr. Chair, your point about, maybe it's a phase type approach. Well, it comes with implementing and doing our best to implement this. And if we find that it's not going to be, we will not move forward with a half-baked remedy. We're there to get it right. And the slurry wall is not going to get us there. And we discover that, then we go back and we do it over to get it right, because that's the job. That's our goal, is to get it right. And even if we get the slurry wall in, that's years and years of monitoring, ongoing monitoring, and making sure that it never fails. Glencore will be on the hook in perpetuity to make sure that the maintenance of the site is robust, the sampling, EPA will be there to provide oversight and review, formal 5-year reviews to make sure the remedies remains protective. And if it doesn't, we go in and we fix it, because that's the goal, is to keep protectiveness.
Again, I want 100% certainty, and that's my goal. And I hope the rest of the council shares that with me. But putting in just a slurry wall and then maybe fine tuning that later on isn't the confidence level that I'm after and that I feel good about. So again, when you said restore, well, restore it to the condition it was in 1850. How about that? Or, what would the ground look like then? That would be a good goal. But that's not what we're doing. We're leaving the contaminants in space. We're leaving that cyanide buried in the ground as a waiting time bomb. We're waiting for our technology to fail. And I can't predict the earthquakes there. I can't predict the 500-year flood event that might wash away a whole bunch of stuff there. I can't predict that. Neither can you. But what we can do is we can predict if we move the dirty stuff out and get it into a more secure location, that's better for all of us. And that's certainty. So that's really what, you know, is the best. So.
And Mr. Chair, I don't want to leave you with uncertainties. We have looked at impacts of earthquakes. We have looked at impacts of the floodplain. The site itself is 100 feet above the river, and so we've looked at those impacts and feel confident those are extremely low likely, if not unlikely at all. So. And we get that through slurry wall design. We get that through understanding the geology, and so I trust me that we've looked at those things. That is reflected in the record, and if you need time to look at that, I understand. But yeah, thank you for the comments.
I just had one more question, Mr. Vice Chair. In regards to the resource you discussed, are we talking about some technical assistance? Or are you looking for funding in a particular manner to help as far as your review of the documents? You said the additional resources you would be looking at.
Probably both. You know, I'm reflecting on both contemporary issues we have right now off reservation. This particular issue in the main stem of the Flathead River on the shores of the main stem of the Flathead, and then the whole Elk River Valley mining. And it's both off reservation treaty resources that we're trying to protect and maintain and preserve water quality. They're both dealing with ground source issues, and they're both happen to be dealing with now the same damn company, Glencore. And you know, when I first researched Glencore, actually was just kind of researching tech up there, and then got into who these big mining companies are, and then all the mining companies that are housed up in Canada. It's absolutely incredible. But then started looking at who is Glencore. And trust me, Glencore is not your friend. They're certainly not our friend. And they have no track record that I would depend upon. So what I'm depending upon is you, EPA, to fill the trust responsibilities for us and making sure that this isn't impacting our treaty resources, our tribes in perpetuity, just like your agency is intended to do. And to think that anything else that they're going to come forward and do the right thing, no, they have no record of coming forward and doing the right thing. So do I trust anything that comes out of that company's, you know, resource staff or legal staff or public relations, or not trust anything that comes from them? What I do trust is you, and you in representing us. And so when we give you our sincere, you know, issues and concerns, we trust you, but we want to make sure that we can verify everything to our constituents, to our resources, and to our children that are yet to be born, that we're doing the right thing. And we're not there. I just could tell you that right now. We are not there with this particular issue. We are not there.
Yeah, and I appreciate that. And that's why I was speaking directly toward the resources that you asked may be available, just trying to define what area that we can look in and evaluate that could be of assistance to you.
Well, what I can do is promise you that we can provide some more written comments to you in this consultation process, and a list of funding that we would like to see, whether it's technical or, you know, just, you know, document review or whatever it might be. We can provide that also to you.
That would be helpful.
And that might help us find the funding source that would be appropriately matched to it. Yeah, Chauncey.
And I think as well as funding for sampling, water quality sampling that we can probably do on the lake and the river, that would help us out.
Go ahead, Len.
This would be for Chauncey. Has this issue been presented to the Elders Committee? Okay. Okay. I think it would be wise if we were to have some kind of presentation to the Elders Committee, so they're aware of the issue, so they know exactly what's going on and why their council is adamantly opposed to it. So they understand what is at stake here.
Thank you.
Any other comments? Yeah, is there any other questions from staff? Anybody? Because again, you're here and we deeply appreciate you coming, Casey. I really do.
Well, I'll just say thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. Thank you, Council, for having us. We appreciate the time. We'll get back to you with some next steps, and we'll talk amongst ourselves and be in contact.
Okay, we'll send you written comments as soon as we can. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, we can have a break. There's one more agenda item. Indian Country Development. You got a plane to catch? Okay, come on up, Heather. Come on up. Yeah. Good afternoon, Heather. Good afternoon. You had to push a button on the mic in order to get the red light going, and then there you go.
Good afternoon, Vice Chairman McDonald and members of the council. I'm not quite sure if my presentation is loaded up on here. So, do you know if my presentation is loaded or where Jennifer Trahan is? I can get it pulled. Do you have a copy of the presentation in front of you? Okay, all right. Let's see, I hit.
Yeah, we're looking for information anyway, so yep.
Yep.
We gotta load up a presentation.
Okay. Forward you the. What's that? I think I was added at the last minute, but I sent the information a couple of weeks ago for the presentation. So let me look and see what I sent Jennifer, and I'll forward it. Martin's got it? Okay. I'm assuming it'll show up on here. Yeah, perfect. Okay. Let's see, that's the one pager. Do you have the deck? Okay. That's okay. I think. Nope, that's the letter, or sorry, that was the article that we, published on the, phase one. Just looking in my mail. I apologize. I could have had this loaded up on my computer. No, I'm from Helena. Okay, let me just take a quick peek here. Okay, let's see. Councilmember Matt, what's your email? I'll email it to you. I just sent it to you and it'll be the PowerPoint that's 8.5 megabytes. Yeah. Didn't like the file? Oh, okay.
Looking for the right thing. The Danielle.matt@CSKT. Okay. Good idea.
Okay. Okay. I know, well. There we go. That's it. All right. So, I can just start presenting from here if you like, unless you want to put it in.
Nope, please do.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Vice Chair and members of the CSKT Council. My name is Heather Sobrepena. I'm the Engagement Director for the Center for Indian Country Development. I work alongside our Director, Casey Lozar, who is a member of the Confederated Salish and Kootenai Tribes. And this is, what I'm presenting here is phase 2 of the Survey of Native Nations. So CSKT did participate in phase 1. We came in June of 2023 to talk about participation. And then the tribe participated and we came back in, I believe, late April to present on the pilot phase participation. And so that was looking at fiscal year 2019 tribal revenues and expenditures. And this phase 2 is looking at fiscal year 2022. What is different is that we've refined the questions in the survey, and we've also expanded the survey to include 2 regional organizations, one being the Affiliated Tribes of Northwest Indians, of which CSKT is a member, as well as the United South and Eastern Tribes, which basically represents the Eastern Seaboard. So I'm just going to do a quick overview of CICD in case you don't know what CICD is, and then we'll look at what the survey is helping to provide. So we can, let's see. If you want to go to the next slide. This will be real collaboration here. So basically what the next slide says is that everything I tell you in this presentation is my representation. It doesn't represent the Federal Reserve. That's okay. Yep, this is perfect. So the Federal Reserve, the Center for Indian Country Development is a specialized research and analysis center of the Minneapolis Federal Reserve Bank. And rather than just looking within our district, which are the states that you see in yellow, or portions of states that you see in yellow at the top, we serve the entire span of Indian country. And our president is committed to utilizing the Center for Indian Country Development to help Native nations chart their own economic futures. And the way that we can do that and provide that assistance through the Center for Indian Country Development is by providing high quality data and analysis on tribal economies. Go ahead and go forward. So I think I briefly mentioned this, but our mission is to advance the economic self-determination and prosperity of Native nations, as well as Indigenous communities through actionable data and research that make substantial contributions to public policy. So we're not doing economic research for academic purposes or just for fun or out of curiosity. We really want the work that we do to actually make a difference. And as you'll see in a couple of slides, the reason that we envision a future in which resilient and robust Indian country economies enhance the economic, community, and cultural well-being of Native nations, as well as Indigenous communities and the U.S., is because many of us are from Indian country. And you can go ahead and go to the next slide. So this is our team. Under Casey's leadership, the center expanded from about 3 or 4 positions when I was initially hired back in 2020 to an expansion of over 20 staff, as well as external research partners, and then a whole senior leadership team that supports the Center for Indian Country Development. So we're basically split into 3 parts in our team. We have our research team, which is composed of economists and data scientists. We have our policy team, which are experts in federal Indian law, as well as public policy. And then we have our engagement team, which I lead. And so our concern is to make sure that the work that we do is valuable and in partnership and collaboration with tribal nations and indigenous communities. Go to the next slide. And not only that, but we have a leadership council that's an advisory group to the Center for Indian Country Development, which is very unique within the Federal Reserve structure and system, where we are really leaning into key representatives, not only from Native nations, but also national organizations, academia and higher education that are particularly well-versed and knowledgeable around tribal data sovereignty, as well as industry and representatives from federal agencies. So for us, it's a good mix of perspectives to make sure that the work that we're doing resonates with our relatives across Turtle Island. Next slide. So the way that we make our information available is through research, data, and policy efforts that are really informed by community engagement. And so those come out in publications and in convenings. So you'll see that our research and analysis is focused on access to capital, economic diversification, as well as the broad Indian country economic ecosystem, and then regional ecosystems. And so we publish articles as well as research papers around things like the uptake of new market tax credits and how well those are working in Indian country. Federal contracting and the diversification of tribal revenues through the utilization of tribal enterprises, as well as looking at resources for private sector development on reservations, like small business development centers that have been funded to provide technical assistance and access to financing for small businesses. And so we look at like how well are Native small business owners being able to utilize those services. And then another area that we look at as part of the economic infrastructure is taxation and tax equity between tribal governments and other governments. So one of the ways that we sort of pull all of these pieces together and really provide a platform for policymakers to convene from the tribal level to the federal level is by hosting convenings. And we do that around topical areas in terms of access to capital, like Native CDFIs or federal contracting. But we also host an annual summit that pulls all of those pieces and parts together into an annual summit, research and data summit, and shares the information that we are learning throughout the year and reflected through the lens of communities and tribal governments that are dealing with the specific topical areas that we're studying. So for example, we have a data summit coming up in mid-November, where we will be reflecting tribal data sovereignty and data in action, how tribes are actually using their data. So we can go to the next slide. As part of filling the tribal economic data gap, one of the things that we've committed to in the last couple of years is developing a cache of data tools that Native nations can use to help tell their economic stories. And so we have Native community data profiles that we've expanded and updated. We have the Native American Funding and Finance Atlas, where you can look at how federal funding mechanisms cover Indian country, as well as a Native American financial institutions map that maps out financial institutions, whether they're minority deposit institutions, banks like Eagle Bank, or Native CDFIs, as long as those financial institutions have a commitment to serve Native members, they're included in that map. It's not the whole universe of financial institutions, but it's a good way to sort of understand all of the financial institutions that are specifically focused on Native populations. We also have a labor market dashboard and an entrepreneurship dashboard to show really the trending of the workforce across Indian country, as well as the entrepreneurial environment across Indian country. And then we also have tribal economic zones, which show the economic reach of tribal nations in their regions. So here's a QR code that will, if you take a picture of it with your phone or hold your phone up to it, it'll take you to all of these data tools. They're pretty fun to play around with. And we always welcome feedback on those. Go to the next one. Oh. Yeah, it'll populate like a little link at the bottom. Yeah, those are pretty cool. So the Survey of Native Nations, this is probably a repeat for some of you that have been on council. I think maybe most everyone here was created by the center and is conducted in collaboration with tribal governments. As I mentioned, we're looking at fiscal year 2022 tribal government revenues and expenditures versus phase one, which looked at 2019. So what we're hoping, the reason we started with fiscal year 2019 is we wanted some pre-pandemic figures to set a baseline. We knew that if we jumped in, even though we started the project last year, if we jumped in sort of a near distant or near past fiscal year, that it might come across as skewed. So this year we're looking at fiscal year 2022, and the idea is that we'll sync up with the Census of Government series that happens every 5 years. So just a couple of reminders. The survey utilizes secure data collection and uses protocols for handling of the data to protect that tribal data. We have developed principles for research and data use that we make sure that all of our projects follow, and those were created in collaboration with the advisory council, the leadership council. And because we represent Indian country and our individual staff, we're committed to honoring tribal data sovereignty and governance. And again, with that goal of advancing economic self-determination and prosperity of Native nations. So we can go ahead and move on to the next slide. That's just a picture of what the slide looks like, or what the survey looks like. So just a side-by-side comparison, our inspiration came from the Census of Governments that's performed by the U.S. Census Bureau. The Survey of Native Nations is performed solely by us. And just in terms of some of the highlights of this, chart that you see here, the Census of Governments does not cover tribal governments. So that is the gap that we are trying to fill. It started in 1957 and it happens every 5 years. And it identifies the scope and nature of the local government sector. For us, with the Survey of Native Nations, it does all of that. Plus, it's looking at the unique public goods and services that tribal governments provide. And it measures the fiscal relationship of governments. So we know that there's money flowing between governments. So we look at that as well as the intergovernmental tax agreements. And it's just the reason that we are doing it is we believe that it will provide finally a benchmark for tribal governments to benchmark their revenues and expenditures against either local, county, or state governments and other tribal governments in aggregate and anonymized. A big difference between the Census of Governments and the Survey of Native Nations is that we treat the data that has been submitted by tribes as confidential. So we would only give your data back to you. We wouldn't share your data with someone else. And it wouldn't be accessible to anyone else. Go ahead and go to the next slide. So we collect the data in collaboration, usually with financial administrative staff or finance staff, and in three main areas. So I'm going to start at the far right-hand side, some non-financial data, and you can see the categories there. Expenditure data that looks at large categories of expenditures, and then revenues, and revenues from really five main areas: tribal enterprise distributions. So not necessarily how much money the enterprises make, but the dividends that they're paying back to the tribe. Any sort of taxes, license, rent, and lease fees, as well as royalties and transfers from other governments. So we can go ahead and go to the next slide. So the way that we think that these can be valuable, the way that we think that participation in this data collection effort can be valuable to tribes is in assisting in the development of tribal budgets and programming, as well as facilitating governance and program evaluation, assessing financial condition, as well as performing comparative analysis. It's also helpful for having policy conversations and looking at policy considerations with other local governments. And for our hope is that over time, it can help tribal governments measure the changing characteristics of their government sector. So of course, CSKT is probably one of the more sort of robust in terms of capacity. You know, there's an annual report that is put out every year that looks at a lot of these topics at a high level, you know, in terms of different programs and the finance of those programs, and then revenues as well. So this is really intended to be supplementary. Go to the next slide. So we provide every participating government with really like three things: a final report that provides the comparative analysis of the revenue and expense data from the participating tribal government in comparison to state and select local jurisdiction data. So if it's available from the Census of Governments and it's from like a comparative county near or similarly sized to the tribal government's economy, then it has a high chance of being selected. So I think we try to do three. And then we also do a comparison to tribal governments as a whole. And that tribal governments as a whole, in terms of the participating tribal governments, is anonymized and aggregated. So you'd never be able to back out an individual tribal government's data from any of the report or slide decks or infographics that we would provide. So that's one big piece. Then we also provide the data that you reported back to you, because that's your own information that you reported. You can also download it and print it before you submit the survey as well. And then we develop customized decks for each participant, putting together the data visualizations and the data graphics for you to be able to utilize, along with the liner notes for the presentations. So I often think of this like, I can give these presentations and they probably use me as a guinea pig because I'm not one of our data scientists or economists. I'm just like a normal everyday person. And so the idea is that we write these in a way that they're accessible, and so folks don't have to, you know, have a degree in economics to be able to read or to utilize these tools. And we can go to the next slide. So this is just an idea, and of course we reported back to CSKT, so you have your own deck that has specific information, but for tribes that are participating for the first time, we wanted to show what some of these data visualizations might look like using a mock data for Tribe X. So we look at broad revenue categories and do a comparison against counties, local government, state government, and then all state and local governments. What we're hoping is that we can get really a threshold of tribal government participation, which is why we've looked at 2 large regional organizations to be able to include an aggregate anonymized comparison to tribal governments. So you would see like all tribal governments nationally that participate in the survey. There would be another circle in there. And that way tribes can compare themselves in terms of major revenue categories to other tribes. Go ahead, next slide. So this shows, again, like just a mock-up of a slide of the diversity across revenue streams. So for participating tribal governments, this is a heat map, and basically, again, this is all made up information. And we know that because 84% of the respondents said that they received proceeds from property sales. And then you go down to basically the lighter colors at the bottom, 32% being from investment income. One thing you don't see on this slide is that for individual tribes that participate, you'd have along the right-hand side of this slide some stereo buttons that show exactly what you reported, what categories you reported in. So you could see how you measure against other revenue streams across other tribes. We can go to the next slide. And then expenditure categories, we have some broad expenditure categories, but we would do a comparison again against other governments with the hope that, again, we meet this threshold so that we can have tribal governments in aggregate to be able to do a comparison. The reason we did not do it for the participating tribes in Montana is because we realized that we had a small enough sample size that you could potentially back out individual tribes. And so our highest priority is to protect that individual data that's shared with us. So you can go ahead and go on to the next. And then this is just basically like a side-by-side comparison of local expenditures. So comparing tribe X to county Z. We do, I think, like probably 3 or 4 of these, just so tribes can see in comparison to other governments, like surrounding counties, what their expenditures look like compared to those counties. So it's a great place to have a conversation around like utilities and transportation expenses or expenditures, or even education expenditures. We can go to the next slide. So one of the things I think that, well, there's several things on this slide that I think they're important to point out. And you've probably heard some of these before, but they bear repeating. So as a bank regulator and really as the central bank for the United States, we handle some of the most sensitive financial and economic data in the world. And so we have systems set up to be able to handle confidential data. We're also independent. All of our emails end in .org. We're not gov. We're not the federal government. So we're not part of that federal family that is held to like FOIA standards. We have our own transparency and accountability policies, but we are not FOIAble. We also have some internal system controls and safeguards in terms of being able to access any given survey. So when individuals are identified as either the primary or any sort of secondary respondents, they have to go through a multi-factor authentication to be able to even access the survey platform. And they're the only ones who are allowed to access that and submit the information. And then on the backside for us, the raw survey data is stored securely within a controlled environment where only limited access to that data is given. So for example, for phase 1, we only had 2 people who ever looked at the raw data. I myself having given the presentations, never saw the raw data. I only saw the charts and graphs. And we do that to make sure that we're just following our own policies and procedures around that access and around our stewardship. So we recognize that we steward tribal data. We're not the owner of that data, and really we want to do everything that we can to promote tribal data sovereignty. Also, the data exists within a closed system, so this data would not be in a data breach. It's not stored on a cloud somewhere where somebody could access it. And I think, two of the most important points are that tribes get to decide how much information they're going to disclose. So for nearly every single question on the survey, the questions are optional, and tribes get to decide not only if they answer that question, but then how deeply they're going to answer that question, or what kind of data they provide. And estimates, yeah.
So I guess my understanding is you're in to get us to give you approval so we can participate in a survey. Do you have a sample of the survey?
Yep.
Okay, is that in this deck, or is it something you'll be sending us at another time?
It's not in the deck, but if you got the email that I sent you, forwarded to you, there should be a copy of the questionnaire, which includes all of the questions in the survey.
I forwarded what you had sent Jennifer to council. It should be in that one as well. You sent it to Jennifer originally, right?
I sent it to Jennifer and then I forwarded it to Dan.
I just re-forwarded it to council.
Okay, perfect. Perfect. And so, ultimately, tribes own their own data, and we recognize that, and you get to determine how that's used. Slide. So this is basically just a stair step of participation. So we're sort of shifting into the onboarding of respondents. So doing presentations, looking at printed copies of the survey. We are hosting technical assistance events for how to do the multi-factor authentication, as well as each of the sections of the survey. So we have technical assistance sessions for sections 1 through 3, 4 through 8, and then 9 and 10. And our goal is that we provide a lot more one-on-one, hands-on technical assistance to whoever tribes designate as their primary and any secondary respondents. So for tribes who are participating, they're in the process of gathering their documents. So this would probably be something like 2022 annual financials, looking at payroll or enrollment information or any sort of tax agreement information, and then looking through the PDF of the survey to flag any questions that might need additional information for respondents to be able to complete. And then over the fall and into the winter, I think we have October, I think it's Halloween or October 30th or 31st as the end of the survey, but that's going to be a rolling deadline. But our hope is that we can get an initial cohort through completing the survey so that we can start to put together the reports and be able to report back out in the early part of 2025, so that Q1 of 2025. We also have a robust technical assistance site that has a ton of information on the step-by-step process in terms of the multi-factor authentication, as well as question-by-question answers or information around each of the questions. Can go to the next slide. So really, I think what the ask here is consideration of participation. So we defer to your process. That's why I'm doing a presentation today. If that requires council resolution, I do have draft resolution that I can share in an email that tribes can use. And then after that consideration, if a tribe decides to participate, then it would be the identification of the lead respondent. Most often, it is usually someone from the finance office or the planning office. But it would be an individual or a group of individuals who would have the most access to be able to provide the answers. And then we work individually with those respondents to provide them technical assistance. So last year we worked with Greg Spar and Ruth Swaney, as well as Jordan and Shane. Okay, we can go to the next slide. And so I think that's it. Were you able to pull up a PDF of the survey? So yeah, I think it's important when you look under each of the questions, you have a series of options to be able to answer. So yes, I think it's yes, no, don't know or decline to answer. And then even if you were to say yes, you don't necessarily have to put a number amount when it asks for the number amount. You can give an estimate, you can choose not to provide that information as well. So it just kind of depends on like where your interests are and where where you want to be able to see comparisons.
So it's been a long day. It's probably a weird question. So you're with a bank, you want this survey, and you'll get all this information, which would be great information for us. I get it. What do you get out of it?
That's a really great question. So we have different portfolio areas. So like I mentioned earlier, we have a keen interest in tax equity, tribal taxation. Our tribe's able to either tax businesses or activities on the reservation in an equitable manner, because taxes are a significant source of revenue for other governments. We know that from prior research that we've done, and I mean, I think it's qualitative too, like we just know because these are our communities, right? That businesses have a hard time establishing themselves on the reservation because we don't have the supports available for them in the same way that Missoula does. And so we want to be able to show and to demonstrate and to really help bolster the research and analysis in our portfolios. So like taxes would be one, how tribal enterprises are filling that revenue gap for tribal governments, how tribal governments are providing specialized kinds of services to their membership, such as cultural or educational services to their members that is above and beyond what state and local governments would provide. Access to capital. Would we be able to see? No, there is a piece in there about, I think it's in the government section, about revenues in terms of loans. So we could see how well tribes are able to use financing. So that helps us in our bigger picture information of looking at some of those specific pieces and parts of tribal economies. Does that, I see a thinking face, so I think you have other questions.
Any other questions? You said we already participated in some of this, or?
Yes. Yep. So, so last year we looked at fiscal year 2019, and this year we're looking at fiscal year 2022. So some of those questions we're actually carving out ARPA and recovery funding, to make sure that they're not like skewing the data. So, I think all of the revenue and expenditure questions will populate into, like regularly recurring revenue or expenditure and anything that's an ARPA revenue or expenditure. And that way we can separate the two.
I just, since we've got kind of the sample of the questionnaire, I think maybe we visit with Greg, show him that and see if that's information, I guess, that we'd all feel comfortable having out there. That's my suggestion, but we can do what the council wishes.
Oh, I would recommend that we revisit this with our executive team and legal department and then go from there. I mean, thank you for the presentation, you know. Yeah, I can see where you could spend a lot of time providing the information you want. And yeah, of course, that's information we already have for ourselves to utilize. Yeah. Anyway, I get more questions than I have answers, but internally,
right?
You know, what does it truly mean for us? You know, I mean.
Yep. And so we defer to your process, and you know, the decisions that, and the questions and conversations that you need to have internally to feel comfortable with participating. If you have any additional questions for us, you know, we're happy to go through the questionnaire line by line. Greg and Ruth will be happy to know that we cut the amount of questions in the survey in half.
Nope.
So they're bigger categories for the revenues and expenditures. They're not real ticky-tacky small figures. So thanks to CSKT and the other tribal governments that participated to help us test out that pilot that helped us really refine the survey in ways that we couldn't do with our own thinking. So we really appreciate that. And I'll send a copy of a tribal resolution, it's just a template for consideration. It has some of the language I think that would just be helpful for legal to take a look at. So we also, I can send a copy of the data sharing agreement that is, some tribes have been requesting it separately. I can share that with you as well. And that's just something to kind of help document, like, how would we even handle this kind of data? So I'll share that with you as well. So, all right. Thank you so very much. Appreciate your time today.
Thank you, Heather. Any other, yeah, travel safe. Drive safe back to Helena. Is there any other items before we close out the day? End of the agenda. Motion. I accept that motion. We are adjourned. I'm not